former senator from Austin, Texas, former chairman of this organization. Adelante mi raza. Thank you.
If I go door knocking with somebody here, like in the state house race that you have right now, I could be committing a felony. I could be charged for that. That doesn't happen in California. It doesn't happen in Illinois. It happens in Texas because they rigged the system against us. Okay? Whether it was a poll tax, a white-only primary, voter ID, or now gerrymandering. The Republicans have weaponized gerrymandering to an extreme we've never seen before. 95% of the growth in Texas in the last 10 years was because of Latinos and Asians and minorities, right? I mean, Texas is the only state that got 2 congressional districts. Did they create 2 Latino districts? No. And Cucuy did not want it. Okay? And I want to give a round of hand to all the state representatives and senators who walked out and fought for our rights here. Let's go over it again.
We're on the right path.
Yeah.
Let's continue to build on our success, and let's get Democrats elected statewide next year. And the gentleman doing all that is our state chairman, Gilberto Hinojosa.
My name is Gilberto Hinojosa. I'm the chair of the Texas Democratic Party, and we're honored to be here in San Antonio with the Tejano Democrats. We're having their state convention. You know, the largest segment of the base of the Texas Democratic Party are Mexican Americans in this state, where growth has been phenomenal. We've grown to a point where 75% of the growth in the state of Texas this last census was Mexican American.
The Republicans claim that they are going to plant the flag in South Texas. They open up an office here. This is the Republican National Committee. They opened up an office in Laredo, and they opened up an office in McAllen. And they hired a staff person in McAllen. And you know what they're doing? To work in the Latino community and to recruit Latinos, they're giving out tamales, right? They're giving out tamales. Que vergüenza. They're giving out tamales to people out there thinking that they're going to buy their vote with tamales. What they do not understand is that those tamales are being made by people who are barely making the minimum wage. A minimum wage that they refuse to raise to a livable wage. What they do not recognize is that those women and men who are working in those shops that are making those tamales don't have health care, don't have the ability to go to the doctor. When they had the symptoms of COVID, they could not do anything about it. They sat there, and many of them and their family members died. And they only died because the Republican Party in this state that wants to get these people to vote for them refused to accept expanded Medicaid. $100 billion over a 10-year period for free. Your money, my money. Instead sent it out to New York, California. And as a result, that lady that was making those tamales that they're giving away went without health care and lost family members as a result of that. What they don't recognize is that those people who are making those tamales have children or grandchildren that are forced to go to public schools in the state of Texas. That when the first time in the history of the state of Texas, Latino children became the majority of the school children in the state of Texas, they cut the budget for public education by $6 billion, the largest cut in the history of public education in the history of the United States. They didn't care. They wanted to make sure that our kids were not educated. Why? Why? Because the most dangerous thing in the world is an educated Mexican American, right? Those same Republicans, for the exact same reason, have made college unaffordable for our kids. College for kids who are working their little butts off in school, making straight A's, graduating from high school with grades where they could get accepted to any university, but do not have the money in their family to be able to afford to go to school. Because they don't want them to be educated. This is the hypocrisy that is going on in the Republican Party. Que vergüenza, right? They talk. There was a letter to the editor in the McAllen Monitor from the chair of the Republican Party in Hidalgo County. And she said that Mexican Americans have the same values as Republicans, the same moral values, their patriotism, and the love of family. Well, let me tell you something about that. I don't know what moral value they stand for when they allow viejitos and viejitas to starve because they don't have food at their tables because there's not enough programs to provide those people with help. They don't have, I don't know the moral value that they have that allows our families to get sick and die of COVID because they're not willing to provide them with the health care necessary to be able to go to the doctor, to go to the hospital. I don't understand what patriotism they talk about. Mexican Americans, Latinos, are the patriots in this country that when we are faced with a threat to our freedom in this world, in this country, they are the first to sign up and serve.
Yes, I was elected in November of 2020, and I knew this was going to be a very challenging legislative session, to say the least. We were walking into a pandemic. Vaccines were just going out to our most vulnerable Texans and El Pasoans all across the state of Texas. A lot of our students were still in virtual learning. They were at home, and our caretakers were working overtime, right, back at home. And then to top it all off, we had the freeze, right? Literally people were freezing in the dark. And so you would think that this legislative session, we'd be like, there's a lot of priorities we need to tackle. We need to ensure that our most vulnerable, our workforce that's on the front lines, they're getting vaccinated. We need to ensure that we're going to fix the damn grid. All of these priorities, and what happened? That didn't happen, exactly, nada. Republicans talk about that this was the most conservative legislative session, and we felt it. And I'm from El Paso. You all remember the mass shooting that took place. Instead of adding more protections for people like El Pasoans, people that look like you and me, this guy drove 10 hours just to attack people that look like you and me. And instead of adding background checks, common sense measures, right? We passed permitless carry in the state of Texas, where you don't need to have training, you don't need to have a license to openly carry. That was this legislative session.
My name is Claudia Ordaz Perez. I'm state representative for House District 76. Today, I was awarded with the Freshman of the Year award by the wonderful Tejano Democrats organization. This is an incredible group of Tejanos from all across the state who are doing a tremendous job in ensuring that every voter is registered, having those difficult conversations with their neighbors, with their friends, to really showcase the tremendous need for real representation in the state. Minorities make up 60% of the state now. We are the majority of the state, but when you look at our representatives in the state house and the state senate, that is not reflected, especially for women as well. We make up over 50% of the voting population and only 27% of the legislature. That needs to change. This organization is on the front lines ensuring that change can happen. So we need just to ensure one message: register to vote if you have not, and get out to vote. We need you.
What happens when the Attorney General is compromised up to his eyeballs and you have no faith in the rule of law? That's Texas for you today. And so what I conclude from this, ladies and gentlemen, is you can't trust the Texas GOP in the room alone anymore. You travel across the country and people scratch their head and they say, what happened to Texas? Gina, you're wearing a shirt underneath that beautiful Rosa jacket, and it is of Ann Richards. And I remember in 1991, I may tell this story again tonight, is that okay? But I remember in 1991 when I was graduating law school, and the judges and the lawyers in the room will back me up on this, that your third year of law school is a lot easier than your first. Now, I had met my wife within 3 weeks, my soon-to-be wife, in 3 weeks of going to law school. By the third year, we were married, and we were living at 3802 Duval for $450 a month. Unbelievable, not anymore. But the house looks the same. I'm hoping to move to Austin next year, you may have heard. And I promise I'm going to knock on that door and find out what the rent is. But I'll never forget that third year, May 1991. I mean, there was like 2 weeks left of law school. And we shared responsibilities. I mean, we were married but no kids. We were young law students about to graduate. And life was good. I said, Rebecca, let me go get the groceries. I'll be back. It was a Wednesday at 11:30 in the morning. And I walked up Duval to 43rd Street. And I walked into the Fresh Plus grocery store. And you know how the grocery stores always, have a produce section as the first stop. Well, I walk in there, and oh my God, there she was. Shopping in produce at 11:30 a.m. on a Wednesday, Governor Ann Richards. And I was so flabbergasted. I walked up and introduced myself, completely a fan. Now think about it, she was 5 months into her term. I bet the legislative session was about to conclude, mid-May 1991. What I would not give for a court reporter transcript of that 10-minute conversation. But I don't have it. And that was 30 years ago. I can't remember exactly what we said. But was it Maya Angelou who said, "You may not remember what somebody said to you long ago, but you'll remember how they made you feel." Okay. And I do remember 3 decades ago, when I was 29, how the governor made me feel. Ann Richards, on top of the world. She made me feel understood, cared for, and I felt validated that day by our governor, because Democrats care about the people. And Texas, how far we've fallen. And you remember Ann Richards. You remember how you felt when she was governor. You remember how you felt when Bill Clinton was president, when Barack Obama was president. And as we sit here today, 1 year out, we remember what it's going to take to win, especially at this very fraught time. I want to be careful about making inappropriate analogies to war or fascism. But my grandfather, who I am so proud of his legacy, Leon Jaworski. Everyone remembers him as the Watergate Special Prosecutor. But his first turn in public service was literally at the age of 38 when he said, I'm too old to carry a gun, but I've got to do something in World War II. So he volunteered, was admitted to the Army, and was immediately made an officer because, he had a JD and was 38. He joined the JAG, the Judge Advocate General, and after doing some work in Texas and then Washington State, they sent him to the European theater, where he prosecuted the trials of Germans and Nazis at Hadamar, Auschwitz, Dachau, the Russelheim Death March. And he could not and would not talk about it for 15 years until he wrote a book in 1961 called After 15 Years. The foreword was written by his friend and client, Lyndon Baines Johnson. In it, my grandfather asked, because he was German. I mean, he was born in Waco, but his father was a German Lutheran minister, and his mother was an Austrian, and they spoke German in the household. Immigrants, like the best of America. And he asked, how could the country that gave us Beethoven and Goethe fall for a swindler by the name of Adolf Hitler and be brought to its knees by the world? He concluded this thought by saying, if you think it can't happen here, you're wrong. So, as we resolve on what we're prepared to do for Frank Ramirez this weekend, Monday and Tuesday, what we're prepared to do in the next year so that Texas and America do not fall for a swindler from New York who seems to be calling all the shots among a certain class of people. We are in the majority, amigos y amigas. We are the ones who are going to save America. It is our time now. Texas is the bellwether because as Texas goes, so goes the United States. We must show that we are going to pull democracy back from the ledge that certain people are trying to pull over it and win. So, you know that you have a fighter with a courageous heart. I'm a former mayor of Galveston. I'm a third-generation trial lawyer, like many of the great lawyers in this room, and we know how to use the rules and do right by the people of Texas. I'm a proud Democrat. I am part of your family. Yo sé quién soy. Somos familia y yo soy Tejano.
Hi, I'm Joe Jaworski. I'm running to be your next Texas Attorney General. And my platform you can find at my website, jaworski4texas.com. I'll summarize it for you. Number one, I will never embarrass you in the United States Supreme Court. Big difference between me and Mr. Paxton. Number two, I will support the Affordable Care Act. Period. End of story. If there's any lingering litigation from the Paxton or even Abbott Attorney General administration on day one of my administration, it will be dismissed by lunch. Number three, I support cannabis legalization for jobs, to respect our veterans and chronic pain sufferers, cancer patients, and the like, and for the social and criminal justice reform that Texas so desperately needs. As a former mayor of Galveston, my fourth platform position is I respect local government. Local government is the best government because it's the most responsive government. So, in my Attorney General section, when we write opinions, we will have a bias in favor of local decision-making authority. That's fair, very transparent, and I want to be upfront about that. And then finally, on elections, my fifth promise to you is I will take Ken Paxton's voter fraud unit, which is not necessary given the true, rare nature of election fraud, and I will turn it into General Jaworski's voter access division. Because you ought to be able to call the government when someone is stepping upon your voting and civil rights. Those are my platform promises.
Because it's important that everyone have a voice, not just me, but right now, besides our youth, the next most important thing is my rights as a woman. I have granddaughters, and they want to take my granddaughter's rights away. Okay, it's too important for us, especially as women. I fought that in the 70s with Planned Parenthood, and we're going backwards. We're letting the Republican Party intimidate us. No, we need to protect the rights of women right now and our children. Gracias.
My name is Bob Perkins. I'm originally from Eagle Pass, Texas, but I live in Austin, Texas now. I'm a retired judge, and I am the Parliamentarian of Tejano Democrats, and have been Parliamentarian of Tejano Democrats for many, many years. My objective is to make sure that we have a fair convention according to the rules.
Especially those of you that make $600 a month at the Capitol. Buenos días, mi raza. Se siente como familia aquí. And if we ever needed familia, we need it now. Let me say two things that happened in my life to think about. First of all, in the 1970s, we formed the Mexican-American Democrats because we needed to shake up the party a lot. The effort continues. We distinguish from that changed to Tejano Democrats because there were some people there who didn't want to follow the rules of human decency and Robert's Rules of Order. So this is Tejano Democrats. From the cotton fields to the first grade in Bastrop, Texas, where we had 3 schools, one for blacks, one for whites, and one for Mexicans. Not from Mexico, us here. And a great man from San Antonio, civil rights attorney Gustavo Garcia, filed suit with LULAC and the GI Forum. Claudia is a professor. And the next year, I started going to school with white kids. They integrated all Mexican Americans in this state, coming from Delgado versus Bastrop. Because I lived out in the country in Bastrop, there was a schoolhouse next to our little farm for black children, for African Americans. I would go over there because it was just my sister and I wanted to play with the boys and play rough, baseball or whatever. I learned English from those children, and they learned a little Spanish. So when we were integrated in the first grade, I had to take it again, I could make friends with some of the white kids, and it was great because I could speak English. But there were other white kids who said, you're just a Mexican, wetback, taco eater, Mexican, go back home. They were ignorant. So I'd come home, and sometimes my grandpa would say, ¿Qué pasó? I said, no, I don't think some of those gabachos like me. Why? Well, me dicen que soy wetback, mojado y todo. He told me, this is an uneducated man, couldn't write or read in English or Spanish. He told me, mijo, no los culpes a ellos, sino culpa al corral donde se criaron como animales. Do not blame them, rather blame the corral in which they grew up like little animals. That is the problem of the world. We are all brothers and sisters. Here in San Antonio, Texas, the U.S., all over the world, we should be brothers and sisters. Yeah. That's why what I went through made me want to do something like this to try to help. And yet, when we got from the cotton fields to the Texas Senate, my father, my mother, who had picked cotton and everything that could do his farm work, in his tunica, tie, and suit that he had, sitting behind the gold rail at the Senate, he tells me after I was sworn in, bueno, mijo, qué bueno que seas senador, nomás no te creas más grande que otro. So for those leaders, officials, humility is part of who nuestra raza is. The last thing in organizations, and you've seen it before, it appears there's only 2 or 3 people or 4 or 5 people that do all the damn work. Raza, we got hundreds of you out there. Each one of you comienza aquí. Go and do the work para nuestra gente, for all of our country and our state. Thank you, God bless.